Hey everybody, welcome back to Reach and Reverie. The August garden is in full swing and I cannot wait to show you everything that abounds here. Now, I do have to admit, I have not been the most attentive gardener these past couple weeks because I have just been all consumed with this upcoming trip that I'm gonna take with my sisters. So this time next week, I'm actually going to be in North Carolina, and my sisters and I are going to be hiking a segment of the Mountain to Sea Trail. So for the past 6 weeks, I have been pouring my everything, all of the fuel that's in the tank, into mentally and physically preparing myself for this 10-day adventure. Now we are going to be backpacking through a portion of the state next week, and I don't know if I'm more excited, nervous, a little bit scared, but more importantly, I'm just like I just have so many emotions. I'm excited to get to see my sisters, spend time with them. I'm excited to go camping. We are going to be hiking basically from one campsite to the next and tent camping the whole time that we're going on this Mountain to Sea Trail. And it is gonna be unlike anything I've ever done in my entire life. A lot of my time these past 6 weeks has been devoted to walking with the dogs. I have put on a backpack. I have put weights in the backpack to kind of mimic the load that I'm going to be carrying on this backpacking trip. So right now, every time I go on a hike or a walk with the dogs, I have a backpack with 22 pounds in it. And I go at least a mile a day, and more often than not, I'm hitting about 3 miles a day walking and preparing for this trip. I've hit 4, hitting 6, and still working full-time, still gardening, still taking care of the chickens, still taking care of the dogs and the cat. So it has been a lot the past 6 weeks, and they have just flown by. I can't even comprehend that this time next week I'm already going to be on this adventure with my sisters in North Carolina. I will be having somebody very close and dear to my heart house sitting for just a couple days. When Luis takes me on this trip, he is actually going to go down to Mexico to visit his uncle for just a couple days when I fly out to North Carolina. And then he'll be back and he'll be here for those 10 days that I'm going to be gone. But the chickens and the dogs and the cats, they are going to be taken care of. I even have my dear friend watering the garden for me. So that is just going to be such a blessing that I don't have to worry about anything except being in the moment and being present and experiencing this amazing quality bonding time with my 2 sisters. So what I'm getting at is I have been really busy the past 6 weeks, and I haven't been the most attentive gardener, but the garden this year is very forgiving. We have been very fortunate to have loads of rain this season. We have had so much rain, and it's been rather cool this season. We have barely gotten out of the 80s this year, whereas this time of year we should be solidly in like the 100 to 110, 115 degree Fahrenheit range this time of the year. And today, very comfortable. It's probably upper 70s, mid 80s, just very, very cool and comfortable. And we've been getting rain probably 2 to 5 times a week this entire year, which is ridiculous because we are in the Chihuahuan Desert of far western Texas, where it just doesn't rain very much at all. Last year it rained maybe 5 times the entire year, and 3 to 4 of those times were accompanied by hail. So this season couldn't have happened at a better time in my life while I am preparing for this epic marathon, this week-long backpacking trip. So this is not the final garden tour of this growing season, but this is the last garden tour before my backpacking trip. So as we go through, I am going to show you that there are a few things that have gotten away from me. Look at how big these okra are. Look at that. And okra are not the only thing that have gotten away from me. So it'll be kind of fun to see how wild the garden has gotten. I'm so excited that my white marigold has bloomed, and it's this beautiful pale yellow. Everything over here is growing wild. The alyssum is flowering beautifully. We have calendula flowering back there. And my tomatoes are growing so tall. And usually I would be tying up and pruning these tomatoes, and this year, the past couple of weeks, I've just kind of let them do what they want to do. So they have fallen over and just kind of growing every which way, and that's okay with me. I think we are still getting so much production, and it is so neat. Look, we even have tomatoes growing right here, low to the ground. I have tomatoes that are falling into the dirt, so we'll probably get a few volunteer tomatoes next year. And I did go ahead and pull out my bush beans, and I harvested dry beans from all of the bush beans that were in here. My borage is going wild. I have lots of tomatoes everywhere. I don't even know how many tomatoes I have on this white currant bush because it is just taking over. It's growing into my amaranth. This is Juana's orange amaranth. And look at that. I'm always finding little white currant tomatoes. Just about every single day I can come out here and pick a small handful of these beautiful white currant tomatoes. There are so many. It looks like I'm seeing a Paul Robeson back in here that's starting to blush. I think Paul Robeson is beautiful. It's kind of a nice smoky colored tomato, very robust. We have my Dr. Witchies right there. We have so many Chihuahuan Desert Star, such a heavy producing tomato. And I have loads and heaps of tomatoes on the other side of this trellis as well. We have some Amish paste. Isn't that a beautiful tomato? And I grow very organically. I'm not certified or organic or anything, but I don't use any pesticides. I have not used any pesticides on my garden whatsoever this year. I'm just letting it kind of grow as it wants to. My Yeti nasturtiums are finally deciding to climb the trellis. My red Malabar spinach has done nothing this year, but I think that they were just overshadowed by the nasturtium, so I'll have to plan that a little better next year. Have a bunch of beans right here. I think this is the Cherokee wax or Cherokee butter wax or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and harvest these. And I'm probably gonna go ahead and pull these bean plants out because I wanna give this peanut more room to grow. I'm gonna come back here and show you what we've got going on. You can see just how many tomatoes we have. These plants are loaded. Just have heaps and heaps of tomatoes. Look at my little spoon tomatoes. I harvested quite a few spoon tomatoes this week. And I have been just incredibly impressed with my Chihuahuan Desert Star, which is a variety. It is a stabilized hybrid that is grown here locally. And one of my professors from back when I was in college, we reconnected and he gave me Chihuahuan Desert Star to try out because I told him how I love to grow tomatoes and want to try new varieties, and he gave me a few seeds on Chihuahuan Desert Star. I think it's my favorite tomato variety right now. As I'm looking here, I'm seeing so many little tomatoes. And you can see back here we have even more that are starting to blush. And y'all did miss it, but I did go ahead and harvest my first orange peach tomato this week. And it was really good. It's just like any other kind of saladette style tomato, but the skin on it is fuzzy, like a peach. I think it's beautiful. If you can see, I don't know if this camera doesn't pick up very good close-up detail. I want to get another camera that can do a little better close-ups. But in the sun, the trichomes on these stems just glisten, and it looks rather magical this time of day. We have some beautiful birds up there. I think that they're goldfinches. On this side of my arched cattle panel trellis, I have Tigger melons. My Tigger melon arrived late to the game this season, but he is loaded down with potential. Now I am hoping, I've noticed at this stage in the gardening season that we are starting to get into powdery mildew and sickness and disease in our plants. So I'm hoping that my Tigger melon can produce fruit that I can harvest and eat before the sickness gets to them or before our first frost, because these took a long time to take off. But once they decided to take off, look at that, he's already at the top of this trellis. I do have another nice little fruit over here. The Tigger melon is a type of melon like a cantaloupe, and he's ripe when he turns bright orangish, reddish, and they only get to be about the size of like a baseball or a softball. And the inside, the flesh of this fruit is white. So I'm really excited to try it. Something new, a really neat variety that I've never had before. The beautiful pink Senorita zinnia right here. That smells heavenly. I have lots of basil that I've allowed to flower. My kale is going strong. We've had such a mild summer that it hasn't bolted. I am actually gonna leave these okra on here because they are not, at this size, they're not good to eat. They're gonna be really tough and woody. So I'm actually gonna let these pods harden. And you can do a couple of things with them. You could either save the seeds for them, really cool crafts. I could let them dry up and paint them. Lots of cool uses with an overgrown okra. So I do think I want to go ahead and harvest the tomato from over here before I go to the back also. I can't wait to try this tomato. Look at that. It's how smoky he looks. That is going to be a really savory tomato right there. Very good, nice sized tomato. So as I head to the back, my front garden haul was a couple Paul Robesons, a Chihuahuan Desert Star, and white currant tomatoes. Let's go check out what we've got going on over here. Hey girls! Now what is this mess over here? So I pulled out my Ronde Denise today. Ronde Denise is a variety of summer squash, and I'll show you his empty hole where he was. But this summer squash grew massive and gave me nothing in the 4 months that he grew. But where he was sitting at, he was actually causing disease in nearby plants by holding in moisture from all that rain we've been getting. He grew really massive with the rain. He's soaking up nutrients from other plants that are producing, and he's making other plants sick. So I had to make a decision, really hard decision. I pulled out Ronde Denise, which is basically, it's a summer squash that you eat as a zucchini, but it's round like a pumpkin. So a lot of times you can cut it open and stuff it, and it makes a really good stuffing zucchini. But unfortunately, wasn't in the cards to have any fruit off of this one in our farm this year. But there's always next year. I'll try growing him again, and maybe we'll have some better pollination and better results. Heading into the garden. All right, so this is today's pepper harvest. I have my shishitos over here. And then I harvested my one albino bell pepper. And they actually don't get a whole lot bigger than this. And then these are my pepperoncinis here in the middle. Harvested a lot of pepperoncini peppers. And it's actually been a couple weeks since I did a harvest on these, so they got really big. I actually found a couple that have fallen and were already ripening, and I'm actually just gonna leave them there. Maybe they'll make some volunteers for me. And then of course the Buena Mulatas. And I actually left quite a few of these Buena Mulatas on the plant because I want to let them ripen and change colors for me and try to see how the flavor profile changes if I let them mature a little longer on the plant. So where we're sitting now is the tomato and squash and eggplant bed. And I do have a few tomatoes to harvest. And look at this, I have another Pattison Panache scallop squash over here that's growing. I have been dealing quite a bit with blossom end rot this year, which looks like that. And so I'm probably gonna pick off these tomatoes that have the blossom end rot. Blossom end rot is caused by a deficiency in your tomato plants. They don't have enough nutrients to mature these fruit. And I have been fertilizing regularly my tomatoes. So the only thing I can think of that's causing blossom end rot is that these tomatoes have been overwatered, which is really hard because we've been getting so much rain. I have not touched my tomato plants with water very much at all this season. And the rain has just overwatered them so much that they are having trouble absorbing nutrients from the soil, which causes this blossom end rot. But overall, only a few of the tomatoes are affected, and the majority of the tomatoes are still developing fine. So I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, fertilizing regularly, and leave it at that, and know that we're gonna get some tomatoes off of these plants. Got some pretty cool looking tomatoes going on over here. Everywhere we look, we have tomatoes. I have been dealing this year with some new pests that I've never seen before, where basically it's like a little worm thing that burrows into the leaves of these tomatoes. And all that I've been doing is just pulling off effective leaves, basically because I'm really trying to garden as naturally and as organically as possible. So I've just been pulling off the leaves that have these ugly little worms in them. All right, so I harvested the tomatoes that are ripe, and let me show you what we got. We're getting a lot of color going on this week. So the first example, this is a Castelluto Fiorentino, and it wasn't ripe, but I actually picked it because this is what you'd call a cat-faced tomato. And the interesting thing about cat-facing is that you can get the fruit maturing at different times. So this side has matured and is starting to rot, and the rest of the tomato is still not ripe. Looks beautiful from the top, but I'm probably gonna go ahead and feed this tomato to the chickens. Everybody else that I harvested is in impeccable condition. I have a large barred boar. Isn't this a super interesting tomato? This variety has stripes, completely normal. This is what it's supposed to look like. And the green stripes have almost a metallic glisten to them. Really, really beautiful tomato, the large barred boar. This one, I want to say was Paul Robeson. I have another Paul Robeson over here. And then these were Get Stuffed. So Get Stuffed is a variety where all of the gel and the inside of the tomato is confined to basically like one little sack that you can scoop out. So then it's a hollow tomato that you can stuff. Get Stuffed. Super cool variety. And then this was my lone Blue Beauty off of my plant that didn't survive. Look at that poor thing. But finally my Blue Beauty ripened so I could pick it. Blue Beauty is arguably my favorite tomato variety, and unfortunately this year I only grew one plant and it did not thrive, and so it had one fruit that I let mature. And Blue Beauty is a plant that's packed with anthocyanins, so whenever the sun hits the tomato it turns blue. It has a blue pigment where it's hit by the sun, and that blue pigment is packed with antioxidants, and it's a really healthy variety. And I got one tomato this year. Last year this whole line was just Blue Beauty and I got hundreds of tomatoes, and I grew it again and I wanted to try more variety, so I only grew one plant of Blue Beauty, and I kind of wish I would have grown more because this is one of my favorites. And then I got this interesting looking sucker, and I'm not exactly sure what he is. He looks almost like a Castelluto Fiorentino or Crimson Cushion. He has that fluting, the ribbing on him, but then he has the stripes, kind of like the large barred boar. So I'm not sure what this variety is, but he is super cool, really cute. And I saw him blushing or starting to ripen, so I figured I'd pick him and let him ripen on the counter because I don't want to forget to come out and pick him before I go on my trip. So that's those. Oh, and of course I can't forget my White Beauty or Snowball tomato. This is ripe on this tomato. It ripens to a pale, creamy, yellowish white color. And these tomatoes can actually grow quite large, but the thing about plants is that when they have to produce a lot of fruit at the same time, they typically ripen smaller because they're trying to put so much energy into each of these fruit. So this plant is loaded down with fruit. There's probably close to 100 fruit that have set on this plant, and they are just ripening smaller because they don't have the energy to put into them. So if you're going to do like a competition where you want to grow the biggest fruit of something, sometimes people will actually pick off all of the fruit and just leave like one fruit on that plant so that it can grow massive, because the plant has more energy to put into a larger tomato if it's only putting energy into one tomato. So that's why these guys are just a little bit small, but they're delicious. I like the White Beauty or the Snowball tomato because it doesn't have as much acidity as a red type tomato. So it's really good if you have like stomach issues or acid reflux or heartburn. This is a good variety to grow if you still love tomatoes, but maybe you regret eating tomatoes because you get heartburn after eating them. So I'm growing this variety specifically for Luis because he deals with a lot of heartburn from regular tomatoes. And so he tried these and loves them. So I think I'm going to keep growing the White Beauty. I also harvested some Little Fingers eggplant. These guys are cute. I love them. Last year I grew Listata de Gandia, and I think I'm having a little more success with the Little Fingers, so I'm probably going to grow those guys again. I'm still leaving on all of the fruit that are green so that they can ripen. And we have a lot. I want to show you the back side of this trellis just so that you can grasp how many tomatoes we have going on here. Oh, look, I missed one. There's a little red tomato. Let me see if I can get to a spot where I won't fall on my cantaloupe. Okay, so these are all Castelluto Fiorentino, these fluted ribbed tomatoes. Really beautiful. Then I have some more Paul Robeson. And then the striped ones are the large barred boar. And then we get, isn't that a beautiful one? As we come over here, we get into White Beauty. And White Beauty has a lot of tomatoes. It's hard to see with them all, but there's so many. And then we come down the line and we see Crimson Cushion. And these are Get Stuffed. And there's a lot of Get Stuffed going on over here. there's my white beauties. You see how many they're growing? So they're all gonna be a little smaller. And then there's more down there. Now, tomatoes will actually produce until they are killed by a frost or disease. So in southern climates, you can grow them for a large portion of the year, and as long as you keep them healthy and disease-free, and you're fertilizing them, you're feeding them, they're gonna produce a lot of tomatoes. I really like just sitting out here and looking at my tomatoes, watching them grow. It's pretty neat. We are getting some blossom end rot, so these I just pick off and I throw into the chicken yard for the girls to eat. While I'm back here, I actually am gonna harvest a Charente melon. This is my first time growing Charente melon, so I'm not 100% sure when they're ripe, but I do have 3 of these that are grown pretty big. They're starting to change into a creamy color from green, and I googled how to tell when cantaloupes are ripe, and supposedly if you squeeze them and they have a little bit of give on the bottom of the plant, that they're ready. So I'm gonna pull one off, and if it's ripe, we'll eat it. If it's not ripe, the chickens will get it, and we'll learn that that's not a ripe Charente melon. So it'll be a process, but I just don't want to miss out, because last year I grew watermelon and I didn't know when they were ripe, and I left them on the vine and I just kept waiting for them to be ripe. And finally, when I harvested my watermelon, beautiful watermelon on the outside, but when I cut into it, you know what I found? The entire inside of my watermelon was water, where the inside flesh part of that fruit had just disintegrated from being so overripe. And I don't want to make that mistake again. So I'm going to harvest 1 out of my 3. In worst case scenario, harvesting this melon is going to let the plant produce more fruit because it's going to have more energy to do so. So we're not really going to lose out too much here. But I do have 3 of them. And I've noticed that they're not getting any bigger, so we're just going to try it. Here we are. Now this guy's actually pretty heavy, and it grows to be about 2 pounds. So feels like it's about right, and you can see it's turned creamy. And I am really excited to try it. Oh, look where I cut it. The juice that's coming out is orange. Huh. It's pretty cool. So we're gonna add this Charente to the basket somewhere, if I can fit it. Wow, he's really heavy. I'm also gonna harvest a chrysanthemum melon. These ripen to white, and you can see I have several little green melons growing on here in varying stages of development. I have a lot of them growing. Everywhere I look, there's little chrysanthemum melons, and this one has turned white, and in a few places he's actually turned yellow, and he has quite a bit of give into him. He's nice and getting kind of soft, so I don't want him to over ripen. I'm actually gonna go ahead and pick him. Let me get my clippers. So this week we are doing melons. Yeah, buddy. So the chrysanthemum melon is a small personal sized melon. This is probably about what we're looking for as far as the Tigger melon goes as well when we're talking about size. It's a really small cantaloupe, but it's supposed to be really sweet and delicate, and I'm excited. I am really excited to try this one. Oh look, he has a little orange juice coming out of him too. So we got my 2 melons. That's gonna be delicious tonight. And then on this wall I have Armenian yard-long cucumbers, Kajari melons, and look at this, my moon and stars watermelon are growing, and oh man, that stinks. Look at that. he's growing in the fence. I did not catch that in time. He was not like this yesterday. Oh crap. Well, that stinks. He's stuck in there. And then I do have another one right here. And this is a watermelon that has yellow spots and blotches on him. I'm actually gonna have to get like pantyhose or something to hold him up because he will rip this whole vine down with the weight of him as he grows. Look at that. What a bummer. He is really in there. I am gonna harvest some Armenians today. Look at these fruit on the Armenian yard-long cucumber. This is actually a melon, but you eat it like a cucumber. It tastes like a cucumber. I have quite a few of these that are ready. And then my Kajari melons. I have two that are really beautiful. You can see back there. And these will actually ripen when they turn bright orange, and they'll have tan and green stripes on them. And then I have some weird looking melon in here. I have no idea what this is. It doesn't feel like my Kajari melons. It doesn't look like my Kajari melons. And I don't remember planting anything in here but my Armenians and my Kajaris and like a pickle. So this almost feels like a Hale's Best cantaloupe or something like that. I'm wondering if this is just a traditional cantaloupe or some weird variety that just ended up over here. I'm not sure. So we're gonna let him mature, try to figure out what he is. He feels rough, like a cantaloupe. I had to stop recording a minute ago because the sirens were going by. We live in downtown, so right like 1 block away is Main Street, so all day long you hear sirens. Well, as I was waiting for them to pass, I found a pickle. I mean, it's a cucumber, a true cucumber, but this is muncher cucumber, which you make pickles out of. Isn't that adorable? And then there's another one right there. That makes me so happy. I had just about, given up on the idea of having true cucumbers in my garden this year. Very content with the Armenian yard-long cucumbers, which perform extraordinarily well with heat. But there we go, got some pickles over there. All right, and that is today's harvest. And I actually have harvested quite a few of these Armenian yard-long cucumbers the past couple weeks and didn't record it. So this is a super prolific plant to grow if you live in a hot climate. Well, that's all I have for you guys today on this week's garden tour, but stay tuned because we have a lot more content coming soon. If you like this video, give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. That way you can stay up to date with the greatest and latest everything going on here at Reach and Reverie. I hope that if there's one thing you can take away from these garden tours, it's that anybody can be a gardener. You don't have to have a huge property or lots and lots of acres to be successful in growing some of your own food.